What Makes Us Human? My next guest is the co-creator of the Brixton Soup Kitchen based in South London. It offers food, drink and companionship to people in desperate need. He's done an amazing job with it. Since its foundation in 2013, it's served more than 25,000 meals. He's also a community leader with a passion for supporting marginalised young people, and he's had quite the life himself. He's been stabbed and he's been shot along the way, but I'm glad to say he lived to tell the tale, and he's going to tell us what makes us human.
What makes us human is our resilience and our empathy. Our ability to recover quickly from our adverse experiences, but also, despite this, our ability to think of others. I've worked with young people for over 20 years as a youth worker. Young people that have been affected by violence, neglect, loss and even death. Now, over the last 7 years, I've also worked through the Brixton Soup Kitchen with people who have been dealt the worst cards imaginable. But I've also found that those who've gone through these experiences also are some of the most humble and empathetic people ever. Now, looking at the kind of community that I grew up with in Lambeth, we had the highest rates of youth violence, highest incidence of mental health, highest rates of HIV, second highest rates of teen pregnancy. 1 in 3 children was born into poverty. As a black man, you were 6 times more likely to be stopped and searched, 3 times more likely to be arrested and more likely to receive a custodial sentence for the same crime as their white counterpart. Now, it's so easy to look at this through the kind of lens of trauma and just look at and say, that's so sad, we need to do more. But we should also look at the resilience that we had to build in order to survive. And I think that's a place to celebrate. If you look closely at our community, you will find so much value in it. We have people like Carl Loco, who, despite being a gang member, has been featured numerous times on the front of newspapers with different kind of weapons and involved in various violence. He was able to turn his life all the way around to the point he was one of the few people that was invited to the royal wedding. People like Terrell Lewis, who built the block workout because he couldn't afford the gym. They shared the same origins and same places of birth as people like David Bowie. You know, we have a former mayor of London from Brixton. We've got a former Prime Minister from Brixton. Sometimes it's important that we empower our local communities in addressing the issues that they are most affected. We must learn to bridge the gap between the most vulnerable people in our community so we can learn from their experiences and they can learn from ours. But sometimes we expect them to be thriving when they are barely surviving. The real tragedy behind poverty is not the actual poverty itself, but what it does to your hopes and dreams. It's so important that we continue to inspire people by sharing our experiences, being empathetic to the different experiences various people go through, and it's really celebrating the resilience that you have to build through these experiences. Every experience is a good experience as long as you can learn to grow from it.
Thank you, Mahamed Hashi. And you can listen again to Mahemed's essay by downloading the podcast, What Makes Us Human. Just head to the BBC Sounds app or website and we'll talk in a moment. Mahemed's chosen track first is Black Boys by Bashi.
Look, straight away, no long ting. This is out to all the black boys growing up, yeah? There's bare positive black boys around you making movements towards success. Look, it's like I love it when I see rich black men like Diddy and Nelly, but was even happier when I seen Dizzy Rascal getting albums and get his face on the telly. Personally, when he won his Mercury, I thought, well done. He's a black boy who's just like me, so like his respect is due.
That's Bashi and Black Boys, and we say welcome to Mahamed Hashi. Thank you for that choice. That's very current because he's talking about lockdown in there.
100%. That was part of my choice.
and the number of name checks, I think, in that song was a record. I heard Beverly Knight in there.
Yeah, literally, it's just a reminder for us, if I'm totally honest with you. And it's interesting because the song was actually made in 2007.
Really?
Yeah, 13 years ago.
So the lockdown thing is not a reference to COVID at all?
Not to COVID. It's to do with young people in prison.
I see, of course. And I hear lockdown and I just think of the pandemic. How strange is that? Great choice, Mahamed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeremy.
Tell us about your childhood. We associate you with Brixton in terms of your adult life, but were you there as a child as well?
Yeah, I feel like I've been there forever, if I'm honest with you. I can't remember anything before Brixton. So I moved in 1989. So I was about 6 years old at the time. Grew up in Stockwell, which at the time, Stockwell, Brixton, Tulsa, the whole area was just always seen as one. Went to a local school. We had 5 head teachers in 5 years. So every year our head teacher just happened to disappear. And at the time, we never really understood it. I think out of 200 of us, about 7 of us got 5 A to Cs. So, in terms of, again, the song choice and generally, my ethos, it's about, at that time, there wasn't any aspiration, let alone hope. It was just kind of surviving. And that was enough for us at the time.
And when you say your head teacher disappeared every year, but no one asked why, but I suppose it's only later that you think, oh, this was regarded as a school that no one could turn around.
100%. Until the current head teacher, Miss Tapper, if I'm honest with you, and she's still here now. So that's...
So as a child, you look back and you see your childhood already being impaired through lack of education.
I don't even think of it. I think it's sabotaged, if I'm honest with you, because there wasn't even any alternative narrative, so let alone, we didn't even know we was in such trouble. So we didn't even have any kind of inclination to save ourselves or work hard. It was just kind of seen how it is.
Do you remember doing your GCSEs, for example?
Yes, I remember doing my GCSEs, but the GCSE I remember the most was my maths GCSE. And I remember filling out the first page and seeing all my friends get up to go and play football, and I left the hall. And I was still surprised that I got F, but that's how it was then, actually.
But yeah, I mean, the idea of standing up and leaving an exam to play football, you can see already that the path is set. It's going to be difficult for you to break out of it.
100%. And as I said, it didn't feel like there was anything to break out of. We actually felt like that was how it was supposed to be, which I think was the biggest tragedy.
I read somewhere that you had actually people jumping over the school gate and attacking pupils and running off again.
Again, yeah, that was again part of the experience. Normal, so normalized. It's shocking. So even when I speak to young people now and they kind of moan about their situation, I kind of look at them a bit amused and think to myself, you don't even know the half of it.
So where were the teachers when people were running into the school attacking the pupils?
They would lock themselves in rooms for their own protection.
Wow. I want to say, how did you recover any kind of life from that early experience? But it was slow.
The thing is, I think it was my mum, because she had a kind of African mind frame. She had that kind of resilience that she kind of built into me as well, which was just kind of move forward, regardless of what happens, move forward. This is a country that has so much opportunities and you have to take advantage of them. So move forward was the ethos. Now,
your life now is in a way dedicated to being the adult that you lacked as a child, isn't it? To have somebody, not in your family, but somebody there to say, look, I'm here for you.
It is, but because I had youth workers, which again, something that we don't have currently really, because it wasn't a statutory service. And for me, it was youth workers like Hickey and Martin and people like that came in, and they had the experience of the street as well as the experience of what you should be doing, understanding how to navigate certain issues. And for me, that's really my role models that got me into this work, is just knowing how much a little bit of guidance can change the direction of your life.
Did you get on track for your A-levels? I heard you went to a grant-maintained school. Is that right?
Yeah, so I went to a secondary school called Graveney, which was a sixth form, and it was an amazing school. But I think the transition for me was really, really difficult. So I remember there was a time when everyone was doing something called the Oxbridge applications for university. And because it was done earlier than the normal UCAS applications, I didn't do it because I thought it was for special needs students. Little did I know that was the application for Oxford and Cambridge.
Is it right that you had a chemistry class and you couldn't work out why everyone was sitting at the front of the lesson?
100%. Again, it was a cultural thing. So in school, we was taught everyone goes to the back. That was naturally what you did. And when I went to the college, I found myself as the only one at the back.
Well, the kids at the second school that you went to, suddenly they're interested in learning and you're thinking, what's going on here?
I was so out of my depth, honestly. So out of my depth.
But it's amazing what happened, because you then you get to university and you then think, okay, the penny drops at some point for you. Is that right? And you think, I see how this is supposed to work.
Do you know that? I'll be honest with you. I feel like I was freestyling, so I'm quite quick on my feet, and I think that's something that I really picked up from the school that I was at. Is being able to adapt to your environment quite quickly. And for me, when I went to university, it was still a struggle because I didn't take a student loan. So I'd done 4 jobs, 7 days a week for the 4 years that I was there, and that was a degree in biomedical science. And for me, it was literally, being around the right people, putting in the effort, understanding how things worked, which I think really saved me there.
And you then came back to your former school, but as basically a kind of teacher. Is that right?
Yeah. So I came back as a pastoral assistant.
What was that like?
Oh, that's one of the best jobs I've ever had, honestly. One of the best jobs I had.
Because you could really change lives there.
Yeah, but it was the teachers were totally different from when I was there. So I had Miss Williams, who was my mentor and line manager. She was absolutely amazing in terms of how she interacted with the kids, her ethos. Miss Tapper was still there as well, which again was for me amazing because I know she was the person that turned around the school, from when I was going there, and it was, literally on the verge of being shut down to a point where they're getting outstanding every Ofsted inspection.
So at that point, you were, as you say, assistant behaviour specialist. That was the term. And then you think I'm going to train as a teacher.
Yeah, exactly. So I wanted to see on the other side, rather than just dealing with behaviour, I wanted to learn how to teach, interact with young people on a different kind of level, which for me was an amazing experience.
And at what point in all of this were you shot?
So I was actually shot, not in the school, but during that time period, I was breaking up a fight, and a bullet actually ricocheted off a railing and hit me across the road in the shoulder, severed the nerve to my whole arm, shattered my rib hit my lung, collapsed my lung, and the bullet stopped half a centimetre above my spine.
So you're lucky to be here.
Oh, so lucky.
And do we know who fired the gun?
No, unfortunately, there was 7 cameras, 3 were not recording and 4 were not working.
Oh, so there again we have the comparison where in a poorer area the cameras aren't on, in 100%. A richer area they're everywhere.
No, 100%.
So how did you get through that experience? Because that sounds like you had some serious injuries there.
Again, it was a lot of support from the school, especially Miss Tapper and Miss Williams, if I'm honest with you. They put their faith in me when I was working at the school, and that faith kind of continued through my injury. So I went back after the injury, and that's where I got so much support. I had a good support network. The young people were very supportive. The Lambeth Council was supportive as well because I was a youth worker for them as well at the time. So for me, it was that whole wraparound support really helped me get through that period, honestly.
Because I know one of the things that challenged you was that after the shooting, there's this sort of idea takes root in some of the parents, this trouble follows this guy around. Is that right? So
it's again, it's a stereotype, because of how I look. I'm a big guy. I'm 6'4". I dress in tracksuits. Do you know what I mean? So people who don't know me, I think it's quite easy to make a lot of assumptions, especially because of the area that I'm coming from. And I think that's what kind of pushed a lot of the narrative of, there was a lot of stories went around, the media picked it up and ran with it. And I think that was a big kind of game changer in terms of the mind frame of a lot of the people that lived in the area as to why I got shot. Because it's easier to believe, that it's someone that is involved in something as opposed to someone that's innocent or even breaking up a fight.
Yeah, and we see this a lot, don't we? Oh, he was in a gang, or I remember Stephen Lawrence being tarnished with some of that kind of talk after he was murdered by racists.
100%. And I think that's almost like the kind of style of it, as someone gets injured in something like this, people run to sensationalize it because it's not very, pretty or exciting if you say, it was an accident or it was mistaken identity. It's more exciting to say, there was a gunfight and a robbery and, almost like a James Bond-esque, twist.
Yeah, and as if you've decided to come into it armed as well, which is so unfair.
100%. So that's one of the rumours that I heard myself, lying in bed trying to recover.
I know you had a real struggle with the experience. Being shot is bad enough physically, but it can leave real mental trauma. Is that right?
That is 100%. So it took 5 years for me to be diagnosed with post-traumatic stress. And that was from me actually going to the doctor saying, look, I don't know what's going on. I get bouts of anger for no reason. And then, I'm hyper vigilant. I feel like when I'm going to the shop, I'm looking at every direction all the time. And that was going on for 5 years. And for me, that was so terrifying because I had the support network, you know, I had people that believed in me. I had my qualifications that made people feel like, you know, he's a good guy that got caught up in something, you know, unfortunate, etc. But I look back and I think to myself, look how many of our young people go through these experiences and don't have those support networks and don't have those coping mechanisms in place. You know, how horrifying is it for them?
And during that recovery, you then set the soup kitchen up.
Yeah, so that was so the recovery. So I got shot in 2008, and we started the soup kitchen quite a few years later in 2013. So, you know, I feel like I was back on my feet in a good frame of mind, and I linked up with my friends Solomon and Micah to set it up.
And did you have a really clear vision of what you were doing?
No idea. We had no idea.
It's the best way, that, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So we just set to it. We saw the problem as we saw it. You know, we saw people sleeping on the street. We had food. So we started giving out hot drinks and food. And by the second day, we had a line of about 40 people asking for help, which included old people who were lonely. We had families coming in, so mothers with their 2 small kids wanting to get some hot tea, etc. And that the penny really dropped for us there, that it's a wider issue than what we actually anticipated.
And the thing I've always been struck by that you've said is that you began to realise that people weren't always coming for food. They were coming for company. And that's the thing that so many, in our society, so many people lack.
100%. Again, it was, especially when people are going through things, they feel like you can see it on them, you know, so they become very shy. They communicate less because they don't want any chance of you saying, are you all right? Or is this what's going on, etc. And for us, the food, we used it as the facilitator of engagement, just to get people talking, to build trust, you know, make them feel comfortable enough to identify what their issues are and where we can step in and support them.
It must be so satisfying when you find out there's more need than you ever imagined.
It's I think it's horrifying, if I'm honest with you, because, you know, it kind of catches you offside a little bit, because you're thinking, oh yeah, this is the problem. We've got the solution for it. We can deal with it. And then as it untwines, you're like looking at it thinking, what can we do? You know, it feels like we're such a small cog in a huge machine. But again, that was part of the inspiration to go so hard in supporting people, is because everyone that we support, we kind of, you know, sow the seed that they should try and support someone else or bring someone else to the soup kitchen and, you know, extend that web of support. And we're hoping that the longer we go on, the less need there is for the soup kitchen.
Did you find yourself on the receiving end of violence on other occasions apart from being shot?
I think it was the receiving end of, I think, not really, if I'm honest with you. I think growing up, you know, you go through your normal fights and stuff like that, which for me, especially growing up in our areas, is quite typical. But apart from that, you know, the area is quite lovely in terms of how it's put together, community, etc. But as you know, any place that has a high amount of poverty will have a high amount of violence, which is, you know, something that's accepted generally.
And maybe it's what puts people off reaching across to other lives.
Do you know, I think it's always the fear of the unknown as opposed to fear of violence specifically. You know, people don't want to feel like they extend the hand of support and be rejected. You know, no one doesn't want to put themselves in a position where they feel stupid because they didn't actually understand the problem, etc. So even in the last couple of years, mental health has come to the forefront in terms of understanding it. But back then it was very stigmatized and it had a taboo around it, you know, where you would say, oh, that person is mad, which meant you wouldn't touch them with a barge pole, let alone support them. And I think we've come a long way as a community and as a society.
It's lovely that you say, as part of your essay, that what makes us human is empathy, because when you see people with empathy, it's such a precious quality, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's one of the most important qualities in humans, which is why I put it so high on my list, if I'm honest with you.
Where do you think you get yours from? Is it your mum? Is it?
It's definitely my mum. Definitely my mum, 100%. You know, she's someone that will say to me, if you see a fight, stay away from it because it's dangerous. But she will go to the fight herself to try and stop it.
But where does she get hers from, I wonder? She just worked out that's the best way to live. I think
that's how her heart is built, yeah. I think she's born with it, honestly.
You've done so much good, and I guess you must feel uncomfortable when people single you out and praise you for it.
I do, because I feel like there are so many people that do good. As I said in my essay, there's people like Carl Loco and Terrell Lewis that have done amazing work in the areas, you know, and they don't necessarily get the plaudits that they should. People like Dexter, Lambeth Tigers. I could go on forever naming them, because I've been fortunate enough to get a platform and get to speak about my journey. I think it's important to also acknowledge them, which is, again, what part of that song choice. You know, you had people like Swiss who created Black Pound Day to support black businesses in thriving during this period. And in that song, he named so many different people. You know, I thought that's the best way to celebrate our community and our resilience.
I remember you saying at some point that there was a guy you walked past every day who was sitting outside the tube station begging, and at some point you just thought, if I'm serious about this stuff, I'm going to have to find out who he is.
100%, because I would say good morning to him almost every morning, but I didn't have any kind of urge to find out more. And he was such an intellectual and amazing person. He had so much knowledge. I used to sit there for half an hour, 40 minutes listening to him once I started speaking to him. And I think that's the kind of gems us as humans should be doing. We should be spending time with each other, especially the most unlikely people, to say, actually, what's your name? So what do you do? He played the guitar. He had a xylophone that he played. And I always used to think, where did you learn that from?
Love it. What a great thing to hear your story, Mahamed. It's been really on our mind to talk to you for a while, so we're really glad to catch up.
Thank you very much, Jeremy.
Thank you, Mahamed Hashi. And you can listen again to the essay by downloading our What Makes Us Human podcast. Thank you, Mahamed. Thanks to those of you calling in. Rita Ridyard texts and says, what an inspirational young man. After all the horrors he's gone through in his early life, he's fantastic. I wish him all the best in all his endeavours. And all he's really trying to do is help other people.